The transport capsule cracked open with a sigh, exhaling a puff of ionized air that smelled like burnt sugar and bad decisions. She stepped out of the shimmering pod and onto Earth soil, blinking at the sky as if it were a low-resolution hologram that someone forgot to update. Her long ears twitched in the breeze, catching the sound of distant traffic, confused birds, and a human yelling at a machine that had apparently eaten his money. So this was the planet she was supposed to help cleanse. It looked far messier than the data logs had warned. She adjusted the human disguise program again, though it insisted that her ears were within acceptable variance for local fashion trends. She wasn't convinced, but the mission didn't allow time for cosmetic debates. Her target lived somewhere in this city, an unremarkable human male whose existence, according to the Directorate, posed a statistically significant threat to Orvantes. When she asked how, the briefing officer had looked away and muttered something about predictive quantum models and an 8% chance of catastrophic friendliness. She hadn't understood it, but orders were orders. She strolled through the streets, scanning faces with an ocular implant that flickered every time a pigeon flew too close. Humans walked past her with the distracted energy of a species constantly buffering. No one questioned her presence. A child stared at her ears, but children noticed everything, so she ignored it. She located the address of her target with a flick of her wrist. The holographic guide projected a glowing arrow only she could see, pointing toward a modest apartment building that looked like it had given up on life sometime in the last decade. Inside, she found him talking to a plant. Not whispering, not humming, talking. Full sentences. She paused, expecting to find some hidden communicator, but no, he was genuinely lecturing a pot of greenery about photosynthesis and emotional support. Her mission briefing had not prepared her for this. He noticed her then, startled, nearly dropping the watering can. Hi. Are you a new neighbor?" His voice carried the awkward warmth of someone who rarely interacted with strangers but made a sincere attempt not to sound like a malfunctioning robot. She attempted the required introduction sequence, but the auto-translation implant glitched, turning her formal greeting into something about honored plant-watching traditions. He blinked at her, smiled carefully, and said, "I have no idea what that means, but okay. Welcome." Her weapon remained hidden beneath her sleeve, calibrated, ready. All she had to do was wait for an opening, one small, quiet moment. Instead, she found herself watching how he fussed over the leaves, apologizing when he accidentally splashed water onto the floor. She couldn't detect any trace of danger in him, just a strange sincerity that made her sensors heat unevenly. He offered her tea. This confused her, because according to the database, humans consumed tea when they wanted to appear polite, calm someone down, or start a treaty negotiation. She wasn't sure which category she fell into. She accepted anyway and followed him into a small kitchen filled with mismatched mugs and the unmistakable smell of burnt toast. Humans apparently viewed fire alarms as encouragement rather than warnings. She scanned the space discreetly, noting structural weaknesses, exits, and a suspiciously large collection of novelty magnets. He talked about Earth weather, then about how he once tried to fix a toaster and accidentally short-circuited the entire building. She listened, not out of interest, at least that's what she told herself, but because his voice had a grounding effect on the chaotic hum of the planet. Her implant buzzed with a reminder, mission priority, immediate elimination. She silenced it. He noticed her flinch and asked if she was okay. For a moment she considered pulling the disruptor, completing her task, returning home victorious. But his concern seemed real, unaffected by the fact that she was a stranger with suspiciously long ears and an odd way of standing too still. She assured him she was fine. He didn't believe her, but he smiled anyway and offered her a biscuit that tasted like compressed sadness. Humans ate strange things. Time slipped strangely around him. Her sensors blurred, refusing to process his threat rating, producing only meaningless readings like potential for high empathy and probability of emotional imprinting increasing. She tried recalibrating. The system refused, insisting that her emotional field was interfering with diagnostics. She told the system that was impossible. The system disagreed. As she left his apartment, promising, against every regulation, to visit again, she caught her reflection in a window. Her ears were glowing faintly, a biological response Orventions experienced only under emotional stress. She touched them in disbelief. This mission was going to be a disaster. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't entirely sure she minded. She returned the next day with the intention, no, the determination, to complete her mission. She repeated this to herself the entire walk to his building, trying to ignore how her ears kept reacting to every minor emotional spike like badly tuned antennae. The directorate would have reprimanded her for such loss of discipline. Fortunately, the directorate was several star systems away, and Earth's gravity made her implants lag by just enough to excuse a minor rebellion. He opened the door before she could knock, as if he'd been standing there waiting. His hair was in a state of disorder that suggested a night spent negotiating with pillows and losing. He smiled anyway, a tired but genuine expression that nudged something in her chest she refused to acknowledge. He said he'd just finished, having a chat with his plant, which apparently now hated mornings. She nodded solemnly, pretending this made sense. Her original plan had involved subtlety, a silent weapon burst, a clean disappearance, minimal property damage. Instead, she found herself sitting on his couch, holding a mug of something he called herbal tea, which tasted like boiled optimism. He asked if she wanted to watch a show. She agreed before remembering she was supposed to assassinate him, not bond over fictional humans making bad decisions. The show was a comedy about people working in an office so dysfunctional she wondered how their civilization had survived. He laughed often, loudly, sometimes covering his face like laughter was dangerous and needed to be contained. She didn't understand most of the jokes, but she laughed anyway because something about his amusement was contagious. Her emotion suppression implant, overwhelmed, threw up a warning notification shaped like a tiny frowning face. She tried to shift closer, preparing to act, but he suddenly paused the show and asked why her ears twitched whenever he said her name. She told him it was a cultural reflex. He accepted this far too readily, clearly a man accustomed to strange occurrences. He then offered her snacks that looked like dehydrated asteroids but tasted surprisingly pleasant. She recalibrated her opinion of Earth food by a statistically significant margin. Every now and then she studied him, mapping trajectories, considering angles, analyzing the timing of his movements. Each time she found an opening, he ruined it by doing something disarming, like asking her genuine questions about her interests or confessing that he still didn't know how taxes worked. She listened, fascinated despite herself, feeling the mission slide further from her grasp. At one point he leaned over to show her a scene he found funny, and her heart rate spiked so abruptly that her implants activated a field-stabilizing pulse that shorted out half the apartment's lights. His eyes widened. Hers did too. He assumed it was a local power outage and proceeded to call the electric company to ask, very politely, if the grid was feeling emotional today. She stared at him, wondering how a person like this could possibly threaten an interstellar empire. Her internal communicator buzzed, an encrypted message from Orventies demanding a status report. She excused herself, stepping onto the balcony. The message was blunt. Delays were unacceptable, emotional interference was suspected, and a retrieval squad would be dispatched if she did not complete her task within the next cycle. The stars above Earth shimmered faintly, unaware they'd been dragged into her turmoil. She returned inside to find him attempting to fix the lamp she'd accidentally fried earlier, using a screwdriver, a fork, and what looked suspiciously like stubborn optimism. She stopped him before he electrocuted himself. He blinked up at her, smiling sheepishly, and said, "Good thing you came back. The lamp was winning." She should have ended it then. The directorate's urgency echoed in her implants. reminding her that she was a trained operative, a precision instrument of Orvantes. But then he stepped too close, his warmth unexpectedly grounding her, and everything she'd been taught about enemies and duty dissolved like unstable nanogel. He asked if she wanted to stay for dinner. She said yes without hesitation. Dinner consisted of noodles he accidentally burned and salvaged by adding far too much sauce. She ate it all anyway. He watched her with shy curiosity, maybe wondering why she didn't seem bothered by the chaos he called cooking. Her ears, traitorous things, glowed faintly again. When she finally left, she walked slowly, each step heavy with conflict. Her implants continued sending warnings, but she muted them. The night air felt thicker somehow, carrying the echo of his laughter and the jumble of unfamiliar feelings tangled inside her. She knew she was failing her mission, but she also knew she would return tomorrow. The morning arrived with the smell of ozone and a hint of burnt toast drifting from the streets below. She had barely slept, though sleep for her species was mostly a low-level neural reset that failed miserably when one's heart, or whatever passed for it, was tangled up in human emotions. Orvantes had sent a retrieval unit. They were on their way, drawn by the irregular energy readings of her failing implants and the chaos she'd caused by choosing affection over duty. She could feel their arrival as a faint vibration through the ground, like the planet itself was whispering warnings she was far too fond of to heed. She entered his apartment, steeling herself to explain everything. He was in the middle of attempting to reorganize his bookshelf by color, a strategy she suspected was deliberately chaotic because humans found meaning in patterns where none existed. He looked up, blinking, still smiling. "Morning. You brought a serious look today. Is it my books again?" She shook her head, letting the holographic disruptor appear in her hand for the first time fully visible, its soft hum mingling with the whir of his outdated ceiling fan. "Not your books. Me, the truth. Something is coming and it's not polite. I've failed at what I was sent to do, and now it's hunting me and possibly you." He squinted, adjusting the glasses perched too far down his nose. "Failed, hunting. That sounds serious. Like super serious, or just serious enough to require snacks." He held up a granola bar like it was a peace offering. She lowered her weapon, her ears twitching involuntarily. "It's very serious, but I won't let it hurt you. Not now. Not ever." He raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting the declaration, and muttered, "I knew it. Humans aren't usually this dramatic without caffeine." Outside, the retrieval unit arrived, a trio of glimmering figures in shifting metallic armor, hovering just above the ground, scanning with sensors designed to detect every deviation from Orvantes' protocol. She could feel their thoughts, a single-minded drive to eliminate her and any threats associated with her failure. The street trembled slightly beneath them, and she realized she had to improvise. She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the balcony. "We have to leave through the emergency exit. It's chaotic, but chaos is our ally today." He followed willingly, trusting her despite the glow of her ears and the sudden appearance of weapons she clearly knew how to use. He tripped over the edge of the carpet and muttered, "I have a feeling gravity is being extra dramatic today." They darted across rooftops, her agility enhanced by low-gravity training, his movements a chaotic symphony of stumbling genius. The retrieval unit followed, scanning, firing pulses that made the air shimmer like melted crystal. She laughed despite the danger, a short, sharp sound she didn't recognize as hers until it was gone. He laughed too, a nervous, high-pitched thing, and together their sounds created an oddly effective distraction. The pulses from the Orvantians reflected off his accidental jumps and her perfectly timed flips, overloading the unit's sensors. They reached a narrow alley. She activated her field stabilizer, a ripple of energy that distorted perception just enough for them to disappear from view. He stared at the effect, wide-eyed. "That's the coolest thing I've seen all week. And I think I've only had 3 good cups of coffee." She couldn't resist a faint smile. "Focus," she said, though the word felt hollow compared to the pulse of emotion swelling inside her. They hid behind dumpsters and piles of discarded packaging, their hearts, or synthetic approximations, pounding in tandem. She whispered a plan that involved him throwing random objects to distract the units while she created a miniature warp corridor. He was hesitant, but his trust was complete, unshakable. The plan unfolded like a chaotic dance. He threw empty cans, slipped over a banana peel she hadn't noticed, and somehow managed to jam the sensors of 2 units simultaneously. She manipulated the warp field, a glowing ripple that bent space just enough to slide them into an abandoned warehouse. They collapsed, breathless, laughing and panting. His hands shook. Her ears glowed softly, stabilizing now with the rhythm of shared relief. The retrieval unit scanned then, confused by the sudden absence of readings, left with frustrated mechanical sighs. She sank to the floor beside him, suddenly aware of the weight she had carried and the freedom she had found. She reached out, touching his shoulder, then hesitated. "I've been trained to obey, to destroy, and now I choose differently. Not just for me, but for you, for us." He looked at her, his messy hair catching the dim light, eyes reflecting every human flaw and beauty she had learned to cherish. I think I'd like that," he said softly. "Even with the exploding appliances and dangerous alien technology." She laughed, the sound mingling with his, echoing in the empty warehouse and far above in the sky where Orventes might have been watching. Her weapons lay idle beside her. The mission was no longer her priority. She had found something unpredictable, something the data could never have modeled: connection. They sat together, breathing, sharing space in a world that had felt alien to her in every sense until now. Days later, the directorate sent a final message, crisp and unyielding. She responded simply, "Mission incomplete. New parameters, survival and cooperation." And for the first time she felt no fear, only possibility. The human beside her reached out, brushing her ears gently as if to confirm she was real, not a figment of their collective imagination. She smiled, allowing herself to relax fully for the first time in centuries. They walked into the streets together, not as predator and prey, not as soldier and civilian, but as something new, partners in the quiet revolution of ordinary days. The planet's chaos, once an obstacle, now felt like home. Every laugh, every misstep, every absurd mishap was proof that she had changed. She had come to Earth as an agent of destruction and left as something profoundly human, capable of love, compromise, and joy.